Hey, today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
You're listening to Arkansas Preps Weekly on Natural State Sports, your top source for the biggest news in high school sports across Arkansas.
Now, here we go.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to Arkansas Preps Weekly, the first ever edition of this. It goes without saying, Kevin. Well, first of all, my name is Kyle Sutherland. I am here with the baseball guru himself, Kevin Bohannon. For those that are not very familiar with us, if you are if you're regular followers of Natural State Sports and you're not familiar with us, we were initially with SB Live. I do the softball stuff along with Jared Hawthorne, which we'll have that episode. And Kevin and I do baseball, mostly Kevin, the baseball guru himself. Again, that's the reason why. He's the best at what he does across the state of Arkansas, and one of the many reasons he and I have always worked so well together. But, Kevin, we're happy about this new start, and for the most part, it's going to be about the same, just on a new forum.
That's exactly right. Teams are still going to be ranked. Teams are still going to be talked about, even outside the rankings. Players are still going to be highlighted on social media, on the internet. So a lot of good stuff that we're going to bring you. The best thing, and I know you're excited about this too, is we get to have a little bit more creative control and get to expand on what we've been doing. And talking to some former Arkansas prep athletes is something that you and I have, really always want to do. So we're going to get to do that as well. And got a lot of good things coming, and I'm really excited about it.
That's right, and we'll get into the meat of it just like we always do, starting at the top of Class 6A. And you might, throughout this episode, since it is our inaugural one of this new show, and we're going to have some new followers with it, kind of the way that we start these things for both baseball and softball is we start at the top in 6A, and then we work our way down to Class 1A. Now, we'll adjust that depending on what's going on, but that's typically our format. So starting there, you look at the Bryan Hornets, Kevin. I know you've been excited to talk about them pretty much all week, but you look at just what they've been able to do under Garrett Bach in year one. They now lead the Central Conference and check in at number 5 in this week's rankings. I believe, did they sweep Cabot last week, or did they just beat them once? Did they play them one time?
Yeah, they just played them one time, but it was a good beating. It was 9-1. So
that's right. Yeah, so it was definitely a lopsided. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the thing, because the week before, if you remember, I had Bryan at number 7 because they weren't playing up to the potential that I know those guys can play at. And probably Coach Bach would say the same thing. We didn't talk about it specifically, but I know you go out and beat a team 7-5 that you should run rule, and you come back and say, okay, well, they had 3 errors that game. Walked a few more guys than what you usually should. They rebounded the way you should rebound. They're 13-4 overall. Cabot now has lost, 3 of their last 6 games. So they had a good start. Lost to Fayetteville, Bentonville, and now Bryant. So they have to some work to make up for. Catholic had a great win over Conway last week. On Friday, Joe Castillo, Brooks Ward had home runs in that game. Castillo tied the game late in the 6th inning, and then Brooks Ward in the top of the 7th inning hit the go-ahead home run that set the final margin at 5-4. Conway, they still got a lot of young guys. Bo Billick is a Louisiana commit for the 2025 class, and Louisiana is now ranked in the top 25 for every major poll in America. Just to give you some context of how good Louisiana is, and it used to be Louisiana Lafayette, the Raging Cajuns. So they have Conway's got a good young core. Max Hollins, a 2026 catcher. They're on the outside looking in. Bentonville, the West is loaded. We know that. Fayetteville and Harbor play this week. Those are 2 huge games for both of those teams. You still got Rogers Heritage that's undefeated right now. They have Bentonville West this week, then they have Fayetteville next week. And Rogers is sitting on the top in Class 6A right now at 14-2, 15-2, I believe. 14-2, yes. So they have Rogers lost to Harbor, and then they lost to a team on spring break. So one in-state loss, and people are saying, well, Rogers Heritage hasn't lost. Why aren't they ahead? We put a disclaimer in our rankings like, look, we know that head-to-head matchups matter, and you'll see some head-to-head matchups in our rankings where some teams are ahead. 4A is one of them. Huntsville's ahead of Gravette right now, even though Gravette beat Huntsville 4-2. We look at strength of schedule. We look at every possible scenario that we could do to compile these rankings. It's not just, okay, put the team that's undefeated on top. Even though if I could do a 1A and 1B, it'd probably be Rogers and Rogers Heritage right now in Class 6A. I wouldn't do that in any other classification. But the good thing about it is in baseball, they get to decide it on the field, Kyle.
That's right. You can't complain about that whatsoever. And so just if you look at just the top four, I know that pretty much, as we've talked about before the season and right now, that it's been a West-dominated class. I was almost said league, West-dominated class. But do you think that this could be one – and I know that Rogers Heritage, Rogers, all those at the top that are still going to be state title contenders, obviously. But is this maybe the point where you're thinking that obviously Bryant, and then maybe a Catholic, Cabot, someone like that, or Conway, the 2022 state champion. Somebody could get hot as we get down to the final stretch here and Central and really surprise some people.
Yeah, Bryant seems to have that moniker right now. They seem to have the makeup of a team that is soaring. Plus, they have the pitching and defense. And as we know, if you've watched the University of Arkansas at any point this year, they're 27-3. Pitching and defense has been how they've won games lately. They've been hitting a few more home runs, but Bryant's under Kirkbach is a lot about pitching and defense. They were going to outwork you and do that. Now, a lot of teams will say they're going to get out there and do the small things. That's what Bryant was known for, and Garrett Bach is kind of following that same path that his dad blazed in Saline County. So with Ridge Sutherland, they got Eli Berry, Grant Johnson. I mean, they got a ton of guys on the team that could do big things for them. And with Ridge Sutherland, the OU commit for the 2025 class headlining that pitching staff, they could be one of those teams that could make a run.
Then down in Class 5A, I think probably the biggest thing that people say that maybe not so much shocking because Sylvan Hills has been a pretty good team, but Little Rock Christian, the fact that they nearly got swept. The first one was 11-10 in Sylvan Hills' favor. And then they lost by a run. The Bears did to the Warriors right after that. So we'll go ahead and start off right there. I think that was probably the one that raised a lot of eyebrows.
Yeah, and it was a windy day. It was last Tuesday, and windy day, balls blowing out. Little Rock Christian hit 3 home runs that first game. Sylvan Hills battled back, and I talked to Coach Zach James afterwards. I said, look, what's the biggest difference between your team 3-4 weeks ago and your team now? And he's like, look, we just have to figure out how to win. This team is going to gel. They got some young pieces, some kids that came over like Landon Carter. But they also have young guys like Caleb Harrison, who struck out 17 against Little Rock Christian. Little Rock Christian, their offense has been averaging 5 strikeouts a game, a little over 5 strikeouts a game. So for Harrison to do that in game 2, hold that offense down, that's really big. He's a sophomore, 2026 class. Fastball is 88-91. He can just pitch. So Sylvan Hills, while their record may not say it at 9-9, 10-9, whatever they're at right now, they're one of those teams that's right on the verge of really clicking right now. So at Russellville, Van Buren had been a team that had been in the rankings, kind of outside looking in. Russellville's 4-2 in that 5A West right now at 11-7. Greenbrier's in that same boat. They're 4-2, 10-5 overall. The 5A South, Kyle, and I know this is probably a talking point you were about to mention. The 5A South is what's a little crazy right now because
just like in softball,
Benton beat Sheridan in extra innings. I know in softball it was the opposite, and they beat Lake Hamilton the same week. 1-run game, extra innings, both of them. Well, last week they turned around, lose to Lakeside, Hot Springs Lakeside. Now Lakeside's playing good ball right now, but I don't think they're better than Benton. I think Benton had a bad game. Ayers couldn't get hit big time. That's baseball. So Benton, I still think a lot of young talent. Sawyer Wilson, Dalton Adair committed or signed with UCA. They're still in the top 7 teams right now. Now, Valley View last week. We talk about Valley View a lot, and this is your weekly Valley View report. They no-hit Batesville in a doubleheader. Batesville is a good team. Batesville has kids that will play college baseball. Valley View no-hit them both games, 8-1, 15-0. So it was 12 total innings of no-hit baseball for the Blazers. Greenwood, they keep rolling right along. They have Siloam Springs this week, so should be an easy sweep for those guys. Maumelle playing good ball of late. Tag Andrews, Peyton Lee combined for 29 strikeouts in their doubleheader win over Bologna last week. Tag had 16, Peyton Lee had 13. if my memory serves me correct. So still a lot of parity below Valley View in the 5A, and we look forward to the next few weeks of this kind of breaking itself out. Greenwood beat Harrison last week in a doubleheader. That was their win last week. They sit on top of the 5A West right now with a 5-1 record, and of course 13-4 overall.
We talked a good bit about the West last week, and I want to focus over on the East. You mentioned Valley View there, as we do every single week. Right now, they're 6-0 at the top of the East with Greene County Tech. Now, they've got Greene County Tech in a doubleheader next Tuesday, but you got that game, that big non-conference game in the rematch of the 5A state finals last year on Friday, Valley View and Little Rock Christian. I believe that's actually at Little Rock Christian. It's in Little Rock.
So that's been a home-and-home game the last 3 years. People don't realize that. Coach Allison coached at the Valley View coach and Coach Brandon Eller, who was at Nettleton prior to moving down to Central Arkansas. Brandon, of course, graduated from Sylvan Hills, coached under Denny Tipton, then moved up to Nettleton. They're really good friends. So, friends get to face off against each other. Now, will they throw their aces? Probably not. I mean, I think Jackson Kirch of the OU signee for 2024 threw against Valley View last year. Valley View threw off a little bit, but still, Valley View still won that game. It's going to be a good matchup. I'll be out there. We'll be covering it for Natural State Sports, and you'll get updates via Twitter, get some video in there. So it's always a good in-season matchup because there's so much talent on both of those teams, and both teams play the game hard, play the game the right way, and it's a good 1 versus 2 matchup. Now, even though Little Rock Christian lost last week, like I said, I still think they're the number 2 team right now. If you put all of them together and said, okay, how is this going to work out in the end? They were exposed a little bit last week. Tate Collins did not have the kind of outing that he had been accustomed to this season on the mound. He's signed with UCA for the 2024 class. I think they'll figure it out. They have the last couple of years, and they'll be fine come playoff time.
You'll probably hear me say this for both baseball and softball episodes, but you talked about just that big-time matchup Friday. We've got some really big softball matchups in Central Arkansas this week, too. Friday, it's going to be sunny and 75. If you are a baseball or softball fan, you've got to get out this weekend. And, like I said, you'll hear me say this probably a few different times. But also, too, well, you mentioned actually you already kind of discussed the 5A South, but you've got Lake Hamilton in first and then a 3-way tie between Benton, El Dorado, and Sheridan. I think this is the conference, as long as you and I have done statewide and done this podcast, we've talked about the craziness of the South.
Yeah, and there's always been a lot of parity. If you go back to 2020 when Ethan Bates was at Lakeside, they beat Bryant that year before COVID shut down. And yes, it was a benefit game or whatever, but they beat them like 16-1. Cody Adcock was at Texarkana. Benton had a good group with Paulette on the or Paulette had already graduated, but they had a really good group. Woolbright was there. Benton was just loaded at that time too. So I think Lake Hamilton's still sitting on top right now, and I still think they hold the edge. They've been playing good ball. Coach Matt Wiggin, Easton Hurley. So they've got more than just Hurley on the mound, and they can beat you in a low-scoring game. And if they need to score some runs, they can do it. Can they do it for a full season? That's been the thing. They haven't had to do it yet, but right now they keep rolling along. We're now past the halfway point. They're now 14-2, 8-1 in conference play. They're still sitting on top and have that 1-game lead over the other 3 teams, as you mentioned.
Down in 4A, you feel pretty good about Brooklyn, Southside. They're fighting for that Region 3. Those are kind of the ones that, again, you feel the most confident in. Probably Region 4, you'd look at Morrilton, and then Lone Oak, with respect to Joe T. Robinson, them in 5. After that, it's who's going to take control in a class. You look at Region 1, which we have discussed so many times. Huntsville, Gravette, Shiloh Christian kind of at the top now, with Prairie Grove, Farmington, Pea Ridge threatening. Region 7, which I know you probably want to start there, Magnolia, they made a big splash after a big week. And then, of course, Warren leads Region 8, followed by Crossett, Hamburg, and then Monticello. So kind of like you kind of had an understanding where most of these conferences are, but there's maybe about 3 that you're looking at for someone to really take that reign. Yeah,
let's start up in the northwest corner of the state. Huntsville lost to Gravette last week, 4-2. Talked to Coach Greg Harris from Huntsville. They left 9 runners on base in 4 innings, 11 overall. So Gravette ended up winning that game 4-2. Gravette turns around, drops the game to Farmington. Shiloh Christian beats Farmington. So you got 3 teams. At one point, you had 5 teams that were 2-1 last week in the 1-4A. Now you got 3 teams that are 3-1. This is just how it's been the last 3 years. You'll have one team win the regular season title, another team win district, another team win regional. It's happened before. It could happen again. I think it will. So who figures out how to get hot at the right time, that's who's going to be on top. But Magnolia, they've really been playing good ball of late. Big win over Ashdown, 12-11. Ashdown last week beat Nashville 4-3. And that was a game that, really kind of knocked Nashville down. Now, Nashville's still leading the conference at 7-1, 13-6 overall. So they're right there. So Magnolia 6-2 in conference play. You got to figure it out. That Arkadelphia is 5-3. Arkadelphia was ranked at one point, but Ashdown already has 3 losses on the year. That's the team that everybody was kind of looking at coming back. Walt Jones at short, Razorback commit 2025 class, Blankenship. They had the tools to, make another run. They're not even ranked right now. They're 9-7 overall, 4-3 in conference play. So, and one of those losses was to DeQueen. Bad loss, but DeQueen has showed that they can play a little bit of ball this year. Right now, Ashdown would be the 4 seed. That's a tough 4 seed for that 8-4A in a regional matchup. So they'll figure it out. But, yeah, Brooklyn lost to Gosnell last week. Then Gosnell, we'll talk about in a second, kind of laid an egg towards the latter part of the week. But, yeah, Lone Oak, Morrilton, they seem to be the two that are kind of separating themselves on the statewide level of playing the most consistent baseball.
And, man, I'm telling you, we've worked together for a long time, and you already know the best segues. Gosnell, that's going to be the biggest topic probably this week in Class 3A. And I like that you weren't too hard on them. I know that they lost 3 games, but Portageville, Missouri, or as they say in that area, Missouri, that's where my dad's family's from, they've averaged over 30 wins a year, or about 30 wins a year post-COVID. So really good program there out of Missouri. Harrisburg, they're right there in the mix with Gosnell for that top spot in Region 3, and then also West Memphis. I know they're not very good, but that's still a 5A school against a 3A. So I love it that you weren't too hard on them.
And that's one of the things when I started looking at everything, I'm like, okay, you have a terrible week after you beat Brooklyn. I mean, terrible. Errors, walks, everything fall apart for you. And that's just what happened. Now, you're 7-1 in conference play. You have a half game lead over the second place team, which is Harrisburg, but they own the head-to-head over you. So, Harrisburg Hornets, they're knocking on the door of the rankings right now. Rivercrest playing better ball of late. They're 12-4, 6-2 overall. But, Gosnell, Trent Middleton, who are they going to move into that 2 spot behind him that can really get things done? They were ahead of Harrisburg going into the 7th inning. Harrisburg had the last at bat. There was a walk, 2 hits, and an error. Errors came back to bite Gosnell again. They lost to West Memphis by like 8 or 9 runs, and then Portageville, Missouri beat them 19-6. So how they bounce back, how they rebound, there's talk across the state. I don't subscribe to this talk, but maybe Gosnell, plays really well early, then kind of falls off late. They have really good talent up there. So I think the Pirates will bounce back. CAC, they're going to be rolling right now. They got Dover coming up next week or the week after that. So CAC goes back to the 2 spot. Harding Academy, they continue to roll. But, yeah, Walnut Ridge, let's talk about the Bobcats for a sec, Kyle. They beat Melbourne last week 2-1. Rex Tedder, UCA signee, 2024 class, 15 strikeouts. After the first inning, it was 2-1. Walnut Ridge scored the first 2 runs of the game, and then Melbourne scored 1. One thing that Melbourne doesn't have this year is Grant Wren. I think Grant Wren has thrown his last pitch in high school. Razorback commit for the 2025 class. Had surgery. I haven't confirmed what it is, so I don't like to throw that out there. But he's not playing this year. But they do have a good team. They're still right there. DeWitt lost to Drew Central last week. Now, Drew Central fans, you're asking, why aren't we ranked? We're sitting at the top of our conference in the 8-3A. We've beat Haskell Harmony Grove. We beat DeWitt. They've really only played conference games so far, and then other people in their region. As they continue to play, they're going to have the chance to be in there. Elkins is ahead in their conference right now. I talked to Coach Hunter Corbell last week. Same question I asked Zach James from Sylvan Hills. Look, what's the big difference right now? He said, look, we were coming into this season. We didn't know that we were going to lose Slade and Dizzy Dean to college football. They graduated early, so they're not playing baseball. starting a lot of underclassmen, freshmen and sophomores. So as those younger guys get more experience, they're starting to gel. Look out for Elkins in that 1-3A conference. They're leading it by 2 games right now. So still a lot to be figured out in Class 3A below Harding and CAC, which coming into the season, Kyle, we told everybody on our former podcast, look, if you don't like private schools being at the top of the ratings, you might want to skip 3A, but 3A is very exciting because there's a lot of different things that can happen, especially with the regional matchups, the way things are set up this season. So don't sleep on it quite yet. Still a lot to be determined in Class 3A.
And then Region 6 of Class 2A. We'll just go ahead and get the craziness out of the way. McCrory, I know, caused a bunch of craziness. They beat Palestine Wheatley. Then they lose to Desart. Kind of a little bit of some of the craziness that we were talking about in the 4A1 and a few others, but it's still just pretty much madness right there.
Absolutely. So what happens when you put 2 top 4, top 3 teams against each other and it turns out to be a 1-run game? It's McCrory beating Palestine Wheatley 1-0. So that we could expect. So going into the latter part of the week, we're thinking, okay, McCrory is going to be in that second spot. They've proven it that they're good enough. They beat Rivercrest early in the season. Then they get beat by Desart 8-2. And no offense against Desart, they're 7-7 overall, 3-3 in conference play. Last time they were really relevant was 2018. They made the 2A state tournament, lost to Spring Hill in the quarterfinals. Kind of a controversial game that I was a part of as an official. I had to tell fans about that one time, and maybe after hours because we had to get escorted off by the policeman in Pangburn, Arkansas, which was kind of fun. But 2A, latter part of the week, if you have 2 tough games, look, you're going to throw your ace one of those games, and you just got to figure out which one you want to, kind of bar the door and just go after people. So they threw Will Russian against Palestine Wheatley. Russian, loved the kid, talked to him this week. He said, man, I really appreciate you getting my name out there. I said, hey, that's what this is for. You keep going out there shoving, everything will take care of itself. So right now, McCrory still has that game lead, but Palestine Wheatley, they are even in the loss column at 1. But McCrory has a half game lead plus the tiebreaker. Mansfield, let's talk about it. So Coach Craig Newmeyer, talked to him. He's a really good friend of mine and yours, I know, from basketball, and he's always been a lot of access for us. And that's one thing we really appreciate about these coaches is, really talk to us about what's going on with your team and what's happening, off the field in terms of how these teams are coming together. So they lose, and then they've won 8 straight. So big win last week over Southside B Branch, 4-0. Yeah. Carter Alexander wasn't even on the mound. Carter Alexander is, of course, a catching signee for the University of Central Arkansas, but he's developed into a reliable pitcher on the mound for him. Got some of the sophomores, the young guys that are really coming along. Of course, Rhett Newmeyer's in the mix as well. And, they deserve to be ranked. They're back. They're leading their conference right now. They're going to win their conference. Their conference is down a little bit, but they're matched up with Southside B Branch, Sloan Hendricks, Cedar Ridge, and Cedar Ridge should be on the outside looking in. I can't believe I left them off this week, but they're right there with everybody. Aiden Jones having a good year. Kyle Province, the shortstop, is getting on the mound more. He's throwing 4 or 5 innings a game. They did lose to B Branch last week, so the pecking order in that conference with B Branch on top and then Cedar Ridge right below them. So should be a big regional between those two conferences get together. Mansfield won 6 games in 5 days. Not that they listened to me at all last week. Coming into the week, they were 2-2. I said, I need to see some more out of them. I want to see a bigger body of work. So they scheduled 6 games in 5 days. I don't know. They didn't do that. I promise you they didn't. I'm the one they don't need to listen to. But 6 games in 5 days. So back 8-2 on the season, they should roll pretty easily through their conference. Love Rector right now. Yeah. When you have a freshman
still undefeated, aren't they, Rector?
Yeah. When you have a freshman hitting over 550, 540, whatever it is, that's just outstanding to me. And I love the fact that, those guys, I talked to their coach last week, and they're just playing good baseball. Now, Riverside, the Rebels, they're 16-3 right now, so you got a really big matchup coming up. Those two are undefeated at the top of 3-2A. So, but as in every week, everybody's chasing Woodlawn.
Before we move down to 1A, I wanted to point out what kind of year is Mansfield having? Fourth straight volleyball championship, semifinals in football, hosted the state tournament in basketball. Their girls went to the finals, boys, I think first or second round. Now baseball's rolling. Softball's going to try to get to their third finals in the past 4 years. It's a fun time. And I'm going to talk about Allison Edwards, their fantastic pitcher on the softball episode. But it's a fun year to be a Mansfield Tiger.
Absolutely, and that's one of the things that I really like following along. And last week they tagged me. Okay, here's their wins last week: 15-8, 10-2, 19-6 over Mount Ida, 8-5, 11-1, and they ended up beating Western Yale County 16-1. I mean, you're averaging what? 15 runs a game over those 6 games. So, yeah, let's get back into play now. They got everybody back. Trayvon's a huge name for those guys. The first 2 games of the year, I think he had first 3 games of the year, he had 14 RBIs. I'm kidding, kind of, but he had 6, and then he had 4, and then he may have had 2 or 3. So, watch out for the Tigers in Class 2A.
And last but not least, down in Class 1A, I think this is that time of year where you either have 1 or 2 teams, or in this case 3, that you really start to see separate themselves. And that's kind of been the case with 2-time defending champion Taylor, Westside Greers Ferry, and then also St. Joe have really just kind of seemed to separate themselves. But it always is, I feel like with baseball, it's the same question with softball. Can anybody challenge Taylor? That's the $1 million question every week.
Yeah, Coach Fowler, they front load their schedule because South Arkansas, nobody's really going to play them when they need to, because Taylor's going to get out and they're going to play early. They've played 14 games. Besides Westside Greers Ferry and Viola, those are 2 tradition-rich baseball schools right there, including Taylor. That's 3. So Taylor's averaging 3 touchdowns, about 20 runs a game over their past 4 games. They beat Bearden 27-5. Beat Hampton 19-2, Hermitage 16-6, and Bradley, that was 10-0. We talked about that last week. Waylon Waddell having a really good year. Mason Lindsay, of course, his sister catches for the softball team. So the Lindsay family may need to get some extra space in their ring box by the end of the year. But talk about St. Joe's. Huge win last week for the Bulldogs. They beat Nemo Vista in a huge conference game, 11-1. No surprise here. Nicholas French, our man, big lefty, 6 innings, 9 strikeouts, 3 hits allowed, 1 earned run, only 2 walks on 76 pitches. 76 pitches. It's amazing. So you work through game only averaging about 11 pitches an inning. Keaton Story, another name to look out for those guys. Keaton Story throwing, and then French behind him, or French going the distance. Those 2 are a great 1-2 punch for them. Westside Greers Ferry, they beat St. Joe's 2 weeks ago, 3-2. They beat Viola last week. So Westside Greers Ferry undefeated at 9-0 in conference play in Class 1A Conference 2. Everybody else is really kind of chasing those 3 teams right now. Kyle, Nemo Vista 6-9. A lot of those losses are to higher classification teams, like we've talked about before. Mount Ida sitting at 6-6 right now. Number 7, Scranton, undefeated in conference play, 10-4 overall. And then Armorale, the Tigers, they're 9-5 overall, undefeated conference play.
I want to reiterate, as we have a few minutes more here, that if you are going to get out this weekend, make sure you do, especially Friday. I think we're going to have a little bit of clouds in Central Arkansas, and there will still be some. I know with softball, you've got Harbor versus Bryan. You've got Benton playing Bentonville, and also Valley View coming into town. And then on the baseball side of it, like we've just been talking about, you've got Little Rock Christian and Valley View in a 1-2 non-conference matchup. So, Kevin, is there any – I know we didn't go through a whole lot of games on this one. Is there any of note that just kind of off the top of your head we need to keep an eye on?
You're going to have Maumelle Sylvan Hills coming up soon. I'll have to get the dates of it. Bigelow has already played Episcopal. Greenland should be going back around. They're taking care of business. The 5A South, I'll post some games later. That's always fun because between El Dorado, Sheridan, Benton, Lake Hamilton, Lakeside, those teams are going to play each other. Marion, they've got some games this week. The West is going to be fun as well. We'll post some of those on social media here later on. I'll get some specific dates for everybody.
Well, if you like what you just heard, make sure you go to naturalstatesports.com. That is where we will be posting our content for now, at least until they no longer have us. I think this is now Kevin and I's third outlet to work for in some sort of capacity, and we are very excited. Kevin's actually done some stuff with Natural State Sports before. I've known Steve and Will and those guys for a long, long time. And look, if you're in the Central Arkansas area, or just if you like watching sports in general, they've got a contract with all the Pulaski County school districts. So you've got Sylvan Hills, Mills, Joe T. Robinson, and Maumelle, and they're expanding. As I'll let them talk about that at some point, but this is an expanding company that does a great job at promoting high school athletics. So we're just proud to be a part of this. And for now, we will have rankings for sure, and we will have the podcast, but we have got a lot of great advertising opportunities that for this, a title sponsor for this show, and many just across the board that we'll get into a little bit more. But you can send any kind of inquiries that you have to APW. So that's Arkansas Preps Weekly, APW at naturalstatesports.com. So just email us there and we will talk about some things and get some stuff set up. But we're very excited for what we have going on for the rest of the year. Like I said, naturalstatesports.com. And at some point, you'll be able to subscribe to any of the the podcast that we have now, and on any of the forums, Apple, Spotify, whatever it may be, and also as well on YouTube. So, Kevin, we are excited to get this train, or keep this train rolling with Natural State Sports.
Absolutely. And, we appreciate all the love and support. We talked to a lot of people last week, Kyle. I know you put out a couple of things, as did I. And that's the reason that you and I started doing this. And we put in a ton of time, and a lot of people don't know that this is not my day job. My day job, I work with auto dealerships across the region. Got some auto dealerships out there that I don't work with currently. You want to work with Natural State Sports, hit me up. But that we put in the hours that need to be for these kids. And that was one of the things that was a gut punch to us last week, that what's going to happen moving forward, because that's the first thing that came to my mind, and I know it came to your mind, because we want to put a spotlight on these kids and on these teams. There's too much talent across the state for there not to be statewide coverage for baseball and softball as spring sports. And a lot of people were very gracious, and they're very open to, hey, whatever you need, just reach out. So we appreciate a lot of our followers coming with us over to Natural State Sports, and for, like Kyle said, to keep this thing going as long as we can.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. I can't say thank you enough to the people that reached out to all of us, but it's a lot more than just the second it takes to share something or just say a kind, uplifting word, especially sharing our stuff. I mean, that's big for us because, again, like Kevin said, it is all about the kids, but the kids don't get noticed if people don't know about it. So we feel that we have proven that throughout our time, with SB Live, with other outlets that we've worked for, that's what we're all about is the kids. And so we think that the outpouring that we got really showed a lot of that in the amount that people are willing to help. So, well, that will do it for the inaugural episode of Arkansas Preps Weekly. Hopefully I will remember to say that. I know that for 125 episodes that I got used to saying something else. So that will do it for episode 1 of Arkansas Preps Weekly this time. And be sure to look out for episode 2 with the softball side of it. But other than that, for Kevin Bohannon, Jared Hawthorne, all of us here at Natural State Sports, we will catch you next week.